The Merida Reacto 6000 is a great value aero road bike with a stiff, efficient frame set and excellent handling characteristics. It has smart cable routing, decent finishing kit, and is also surprisingly comfortable. Average wheels and tyres hold it back from being a true class leader, but if you're looking for a fast road bike that can be upgraded down the line, then this is a fantastic option. Let's start with the frame set. The Reacto frame set, now in its 4th generation, is the star of the show here. This version is the Reacto CF3 frame set. The CF3 frame sets differ from the pro level CF5 frame sets only in terms of weight. That means the tube shapes, the aerodynamics, the tyre clearance, and according to Merida, the stiffness and compliance qualities are otherwise the same as on the more expensive frame sets. According to Merida, the difference in weight between the top level CF5 frame sets and this CF3 frame set is around 200 grams. Of course, frame set weight alone doesn't tell the full story. The finishing kit and the components also make a big difference. And the total weight of 8.53 kilograms admittedly isn't that impressive on paper. Nevertheless, I'd argue that for an aero race bike like this, the overall bike weight actually isn't that important. While it definitely affects how the bike feels, it doesn't meaningfully affect how fast it is from A to B unless you only race up long steep climbs. And part of the reason this bike weighs what it does is because of a couple of compromises made to meet an incredibly competitive price point of just £2,800. That brings us nicely to the build, which for the most part is very good. The cockpit, for example, is a highlight. It uses a non-proprietary, non-integrated setup with a standard aluminium handlebar and stem. Part of this is undoubtedly due to cost-saving measures, but the Merida handlebar is a comfortable shape, plenty stiff, and the aero profile tops help close the aero performance gap on more expensive setups. Additionally, thanks to the use of FSA's aerodynamic cable routing system, the gear and brake cables are, for the most part, tucked tidily away from the wind. The only downsides to this system are that it requires a proprietary headset as well as proprietary headset spacers, and that the aero profiled stem is at around 220 grams for a size 120mm stem, not a particularly lightweight option. This front end clearly gives up a few grams of aerodynamic drag compared to a fully integrated setup. However, giving up a small amount in that area for a large increase in user serviceability and customization options is likely a worthwhile trade-off for the vast majority of amateur cyclists. It also means that changing a handlebar or a stem, often needed for an optimized bike fit, is simple. In terms of the drivetrain, Shimano's Ultegra R8000 group set with hydraulic disc brakes is as excellent as ever. It's not as bling as Dura Ace, but it arguably performs just as well and it costs far less, so no complaints there. Merida has substituted a Shimano 105 cassette and a KMC chain, presumably for cost-saving reasons, but these don't detract from the performance of the bike. I also appreciate the addition of a medium cage rear derailleur. It's not needed for the 11 to 30 tooth cassette Spectre's stock, but it does give you the option of swapping to a larger cassette later on if you ever need more gear range. Like many of Merida's other road bikes, the Reacto 6000 also gets a set of Merida's removable disc brake cooling fins. They're intended to act as heat sinks and prevent brake fade under sustained, heavy braking. Unlike the cooling fins on the Merida Sculptura Endurance though, these sit within the bounds of the frame, so there's practically no chance you scuff a shoe on them. Given this bike has 160mm rotors front and rear though, they're overkill for those who don't live in mountainous regions. However, they don't detract from the bike performance in any way, and I also think they look quite cool, so I'd be happy to leave them in place. The low point in the build is the Fulcrum 800 DB wheel set. The 34mm deep semi-aero alloy rims are 24.5mm wide externally and 19mm wide internally, which is fine, but the hubs are fairly basic and the spokes aren't aero profiled. They're also fairly heavy, with the entire wheel system, which means the weight, the tyres, the inner tubes, cassette and the disc brake rotors, contributing a total of 3.26 kilograms to the total weight of this bike. On a more positive note, the free hub is virtually silent and the rims can be made tubeless ready with the addition of tubeless tape and tubeless valves, though you will need to purchase these separately. It's not that there's anything particularly wrong with this wheel set, it just doesn't sparkle or get the best out of the frame set in a way that a more aerodynamic set would do. The Continental Grand Sport race tyres feel better than expected on the road, with decent levels of comfort and grip, but Continental does admit that their rolling resistance can't match the pricier GP5000 tyres. They're also not tubeless ready, so again, if you'd like to ditch those inner tubes, you will need to buy new tyres. Tyres are a crucial part of the performance equation for a race bike, so it is a slight shame to see Merida making compromises here. As we've discussed before, it's not really something we're ever going to be thrilled about. Merida considers the Reacto to be a unisex bike, so there aren't any women's specific builds, but there are 6 sizes available from extra small to extra large. The geometry is carried across from the pro level CF5 Reacto frame sets. The long and low position with the steep seat tube and steep head tube angles is ideal for racers, but won't be for everyone. Given your body is the largest overall contributor to aerodynamic drag, it makes sense for a bike like this to cajole you into an aerodynamic position. And that doesn't mean it's uncomfortable, it just pitches your weight forward more than an endurance-focused bike would do. On the subject of comfort, the Merida branded saddle is passable. It's a little narrow in the midsection for my tastes, and it lacks a proper pressure relief channel that would help make things a little bit more comfortable when hammering away in the drops. Nevertheless, the heavily dropped seat stays and the clever seat post with its cutout section near the top do a good job of cushioning things at the rear. And although they're marked as 25s, the Continental tyres come up around 27.5mm when inflated to about 70 psi, giving a plush ride. And if you need more comfort, the Reacto officially has tyre clearance for up to 30mm tyres, which should be enough to tackle anything that can be reasonably described as a road. The Reacto also handles exceptionally well. Technical descents and fast corners feel practically intuitive, and it's stable and confident at high speeds. Geometry and handling are personal to a degree, but I think this is one of the best handling bikes I've ridden in recent times. Overall then, the Merida Reacto 6000 is a fast, great value aero road bike. It's heavier than some of its competitors at this price point, but the aero gains are what count here, and thankfully, most of those come without too many compromises in livability. The spec isn't perfect, but it's clearly been designed to hit a very competitive price point, and the frame set is eminently upgradable. It's perhaps worth considering the slightly cheaper Reacto 4000, which comes with a Shimano 105 drivetrain in place of the Shimano Ultegra drivetrain found on this model, and the money saved could be used to upgrade the wheels and tyres. But if you really want the Ultegra group set, then you won't be disappointed. But what do you think? Is 8.56 kilograms too heavy for a race bike? Is aero everything, or do you prefer a lightweight road bike? What do you think of the spicy blue paint job? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the little bell icon so that every time we upload a video, you get a notification.